I've tried all sorts of different lead magnets. Like I've had master classes and pre-recorded micro classes and 3 different private podcasts at this point, all sorts of like loads of different things. And the private podcasts have consistently like just blown the other ones out of the water.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast. Today's episode has Natalie Koussa on, who is the creator of The Trust Funnel. Many of you might recognize her name because she has been on the show before, sharing her lead magnet private podcast. Her company has been doing guest podcast, kind of setting up guest podcasting as a way to build leads. Correct, Natalie? Yeah, for a long time.
Podcast tours. Yeah, we've been doing those for years. Yeah.
I'm like, I know you have a cooler name than me. Just say that. So she's been doing podcast touring. And in that, she found that the best way to convert people from podcast was a private podcast. And on her episode, she shared how she made, oh my gosh, it was like at least 5 figures from a small private podcast of only 50 people, if I remember correctly.
That was right at the beginning of one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so fun. So, of course, since that was so successful and she shared her, information there, she actually went on to create a service around this. So this episode is a little less case study and more like, what has Natalie learned with helping clients with this new service? What has she developed as a result of this, one of these really successful private podcast lead magnets? And so we're going to kind of get the expert who's out in the field, launching private podcasts for folks and helping those folks create private podcasts that turn into sales. So I'm going to take notes on this one because we obviously want to support Hello Audio users in using private podcasting in this way because it's so great. So Natalie, thank you for coming back on and for sharing, what you've learned over the last. It's been at least a year since you've been on the show, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We were talking before we hit record. Neither of us can remember, but it was a good one. No. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for having me back.
If I was a good host, I would have pulled the episode number on. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for coming back. Why don't you share a little more insight into your business?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, I think you've kind of given like a great sort of history of it. But yeah, in a nutshell, I've been supporting people to go on podcast guest tours for years now. And one of the things that I've seen, mainly in my own business, but then now in client businesses, is just how powerful private podcasts are as an opt-in, like as the way that you welcome people into your world. And specifically, they're so good. So I think with like more typical freebies, people are expecting a quick win. Like they want just something that they can action straight away. And that can be really useful and work so well for some kinds of businesses. If you're selling courses or group programs, maybe where you're walking people through a very kind of pre-sorted strategy, that works really well. But for service pros, coaches, leaders, consultants that are working more in partnership with their clients, private podcasts give you that space to position yourself as a partner, not just position yourself as a doer. Because when you position yourself as a doer, obviously you position yourself with tons of competition. But when you position yourself as a partner with a unique point of view, all of that good stuff, you just create a league of your own where you sort of, carve out a little space where you don't really have competition in the same way.
I love how you distinguish that because like people going on a show that's like, I have this exact framework. Like, coaches develop their frameworks. Leaders and consultants have their frameworks too. And that's all well and good. But you're right. There is something about a personal brand, somebody in the service space where they're coaching and, offering strategy, I think is like a really important distinction here that when you can give the whole story in something bingeable, and it's not like a PDF that has to be read or like take these 5 action steps, all super useful. Like as I say this, I know people have been doing that for a very long time. But there is something magical about the private podcast piece, particularly like their podcast guest touring. and they're already audio. And so someone's like, yes, I would like to listen to more audio. Like that just seems obvious. And then we have this person who is on the show who has a point of view, is very smart, brilliant, has this expertise. And then it's like, yeah, let me show more of that expertise. And you don't have to necessarily have your own public podcast to be able to do that. But this is kind of like a mini public podcast that you're collecting an email address for. So to me, totally makes sense.
Yeah. So I've never had a public podcast. I've got an idea that I've been sitting on for a while. So probably one day one will come.
Okay.
But I actually created a private podcast right at the beginning of my business. Was my first ever one. And the reason I created a private one was because it felt safer somehow. Like the visibility of a public podcast at that time felt just like a lot. you know, like years on, it feels very different now. You know, it would be a completely different thing. But when you're kind of newer, so I sort of fell into it by accident, really, and then saw the results and then got hooked. And I've never looked back.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. You call this the trust funnel. Let's talk about like how you set this up for someone and what the kind of key things are in creating this trust funnel. And then we'll kind of break it down from there too.
Yeah, sure. So the reason it's called trust funnel is this idea that we're in a trust recession across industries. You know, people are still buying for sure, but the people that they are buying from are people that they trust. And if sales are slowing down, if people are taking longer, I think it's because of cynicism, and it's because they don't fully trust that either you understand them and their particular problem well enough, or you don't have the right solution for them, or, you know, or maybe even they don't trust themselves that they will fully take advantage of the support or that you have in place what they need, you know? So, and what I see with private podcasts is they stack trust. They're you know, there's something so unique about people literally popping you in their ears, like when they want to do it. It's so consensual. They literally have to like pick up their phone, choose to listen to you, and then you sort of just hang out with them on their day, you know, like picking up their kids from school, taking the dog for a walk, whatever it is that they're doing, you're just sort of hanging out with them on their terms. And there's something just quite easy, which is always a win, but quite intimate as well. And they get to hear your voice and they get a sense of who you are and what you might be like to work with and, you know, your personality and all that good stuff. So when I'm working with somebody with a trust funnel, this will be no surprise, but we always start with positioning. So often most people that come to me already have really strong positioning, but what we're looking for is a core concept or a hook or something that speaks to their like real best fit client, that when they see it, they're like, oh, that's for me. Straight away, there's like kind of resonance and recognition of what it is. So we start always with the concept. And so far, 99% of them have been a slightly different concept to any other positioning in their business, because I think it's such a unique, it positions it as a kind of capsule body of work. So when gives you something to talk about. So when you're speaking on podcasts, when you're on Instagram, when you're writing your Substack and the call to action is, you know, take the next step with a private podcast, you're positioning it as the next step, not just more of the same. And I think that really helps with, you know, really good organic subscriber rates. It's really going to help if you want to run ads to your private podcast, all of that kind of stuff. So that's always the starting point.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's really important because I think Nora and I, you know, having done our coaching calls since the beginning, we used to do them weekly and now we do them monthly. I think like one of the more common ones when people are setting this up to do a lead magnet and not just like a course, you know, kind of offer of a different modality or whatever. It's how do I get people to actually want to sign up, right? And this is with anything with marketing. And it's like, I think by starting with positioning and thinking about this person going on podcast tours, you know, showing up on other types of social media, like what's the hook? What's the thing that's going to make someone raise their hand? And what we like to think about with Hello Audio is like audio gives you like a little bit of a one up because it's innovative. It's not just like, here's my PDF. but you now have that piece, but then it still has to be good. It's like the audio can't just be whatever, like you said, more of the same. There has to be this like, what's going to make it bingeable? What's going to make me want to just like give this person a bunch of my time? And what's going to make me press play? And I think the thinking of it from that perspective and really saying, hey, it needs to be something that people are going to be excited to sign up for. I think that is everything. Is there anything that you like, any kind of process or questions that you take your clients through in order to find that thing? If you can give us any insight on that as someone's listening, how you determine that or come together with that to find that?
There are. So I have a bit of a framework, but I see there are two kinds of titles that I see really do well, like two kind of framings of the private podcast when it's lead magnet specifically. So one is like, give the people what they want, name the desire, name the thing that they want. So I designed, one of my clients is a coach for traders. So we called hers work optional, because that is literally the people that are coming to her. They typically have a 9 to 5, or maybe they're a stay-at-home mom. They want to, but their whole vision isn't to become this like technically incredible trader, isn't to get a job as a trader. It's literally to make themselves work optional. So that's what her private podcast is called, because her people are going to be like, yes, that's the thing I'm trying to figure out how to do. Do you know? So that's one, like literally name the outcome in like a really kind of snappy way. The other way that I see working really well is name the threshold, like the transformation or the kind of point in somebody's life where they're shifting from where they were to where they want to be. So an example of that is one of my clients is a therapist who specializes in the mother wound. So like the impact on adult women when they've been undermothered. She calls it by their own mother, and how that plays out in all of these sort of invisible ways in their career and friendships and romantic choices and how they relate to themselves, all of that. So we called her private podcast Birthright. And it's this kind of, and she just said it in passing in our positioning call, that what she wants for these women is to understand that feeling lovable is their birthright. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like that's the threshold. So that kind of two, and there are plenty of other ways to frame it. Of course, they're not the only ways. But if people are kind of thinking of a bit of a framework to use for their own, have a think, is there a really powerful outcome that I can highlight? Or is there a belief that my best fit clients are kind of on the edge of, but really need to believe in order for the transformation they want?
I love that. Those are really good examples. Yeah, I think it's interesting with private podcasting. We have people come on and you see, like yours was called Pod Damn. And I was like, oh, that's a good name, right? Like sometimes it's just also can be catchy because there's like the innovative kind of, oh, I'm going to listen to that. Like, I'm like, what is she going to talk about? Right. And there was someone else, what the WTF is going on in the online space or something like that. And it's like, yeah, like what is right? So sometimes it's just even thinking like, what is your ideal person thinking right now? And when they're like, yeah, right. And they want to like hear your perspective on it, they're going to raise their hand. And I think that's huge. Okay. So positioning, any other thoughts on positioning before we kind of dive into maybe the structure of the feed?
I suppose that it should set you up to share why. Like if we're contrasting it with a kind of more traditional freebie, the traditional freebie typically gives you the how, gives you like, the top line of the framework or a step-by-step literal kind of quick win, but it's all like processy and how are we going to do this, do you know? I think one of the reasons private podcasts are so good is because listeners don't sign up expecting to be taught something. Like that's not typically why we listen to podcasts. Like even if some do teach you something, like in some ways we are kind of doing that now, but people are listening to be entertained or to think differently or
it's a little more casual.
To know what's going on in their industry. Yeah, like it's more casual. Like they're not sitting at their desk taking notes. So sharing why your thing matters, or like why the belief shifts have to take place, or like that kind of framing, your philosophy, your perspective, your point of view, your personality, all that kind of stuff works incredibly well. And because it's a bit more long form, you have space to do that.
Yeah, it's like the theory behind something, the storytelling behind it makes so good for audio because they don't need to see anything. Like your point, they're not taking notes like bullet points or whatever. They may be like bookmarking something or screenshotting to like come back to something possibly. But yeah, the breakdown doesn't have to be so like this step, then this step, then this step. It's really actually like the connection piece and like demonstrating your authority and your expertise. And that can come off in teaching. But also, I think what I think is interesting in our space right now, too, is like, because I used to teach this when I taught people how to build courses. And it's like I came from teaching sociology specifically. There was a lot of sociology teachers that students, right, would sign up for. And like, yeah, sure. You're in college, you're signing up for whatever doesn't have to get you up early or like whatever allows you to like come to school late or whatever. But also you're like, I've heard good things about this teacher. I've heard good things about this professor or whatever. And so there's a choice there. And so there's lots of people teaching copywriting and marketing. And so like, because this is why personal brands are so important. It's like, who is the person behind this? Like, what do they believe about the world? Like, that's the job of your lead magnet. If you're thinking top of funnel or middle of funnel to get the, conversion, the sale, whatever, it's like the person raising their hand and saying like, oh yeah, I think I believe that too about how to post on social media, right? Like, I don't want to post 4 times a day, right? And so that's why those hooks land. Like, I don't post 4 times a day. I post once a week and, here are my results. And you're like, yeah, like I believe that, right? Or I want to believe that. And so I think I love this because I agree with you. I think audio is such a way to communicate that where you have like captive attention in a way that you don't have with Instagram and all of this. And that like that attention feels fleeting, still important, but fleeting. There is something about someone choosing, putting on those headphones or getting in the car, picking your thing and listening and like not clicking away because they kind of can't. They're driving. They're like, they're multitasking. So you have them a little captive, right? But it's also like there's habitual things tied to it. So anyways, I think what I'm getting from you is like, you have them listening, like bring your best you, right? Bring like how you see the world. And then like the how is the higher, the you know what I mean? The like the next step or whatever. And audio is so good at that, I feel like.
Yeah. And it gives you so much space to bring your personality. Like one of my clients is a career coach. Yeah, it does. And she's hilarious and she's sweary and so all of that is in the private podcast because that's what she's going to be like to work with, and like her right people are going to adore her for that, Yes. So there's this, whereas sometimes that can be quite hard to get across on social media without being, I don't know, like offensive or something, or because it's like such a snapshot. Whereas the private podcast, you can just chat away and then edit it afterwards if you want to. Use something like Descript is the easiest thing in the world. It's like editing a Google Doc, and then they have that lovely little export straight into Hello Audio, so there's no messing around with files. Like, it's just the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Any other thoughts on positioning? Because I feel like this is an important piece.
I think just really doing the work to have a point of view that isn't something that is just because it's so easy to make like a hook or a hot take, but you need to be able to talk about this thing.
You have to back it up.
Do you know what I mean? And also it's something you're literally going to be known for. Like this, I think of making a private podcast as making like a mini body of work. Like people literally quote back to me something I said in the private podcast that, if I'm honest, I don't even remember saying because I recorded it so long ago and that's it. It's just kind of hanging out there. So it has to be something. And they say it and I'm like, oh, did I say that? Okay, good. Yeah. You want it to be like that. You don't want it to be something you're like, oh, I've changed my mind already, or, whatever. Like really, really just do the work to have. It can be a strong point of view, but a point of view you truly believe in, not just something that you think sounds good.
Yeah, that's so good. I think, delivering on, it could be clickbaity, it could have the hook, it could be whatever, but like if you don't deliver on like what you are saying, then that's the opposite of this whole trust funnel thing. They're going to be like, okay. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk now a little bit, maybe we can get into the tech too, because I know you do a lot of the setup, and I think thinking through some of those pieces can seem overwhelming. This is a funnel that you are building, so we can talk about that. But maybe let's talk about the episodes. Like, how do you script them and kind of pull that out of your client so they have a good point of view? Questions we get all the time. How many episodes? Like, how long should they be? Are you selling in it in some capacity? So yeah, give us the goods on that. What are you seeing?
Yeah, sure. So I outline the episodes. I don't script them for them because I want them to always sound like the person. So I literally tell them the shape of the episode and what goes where. And then, and I'll say, tell this story, and I won't script the story, even if they told me it, because I just want them to chat and be themselves, and they'll do it so much better than I could write for them anyway. So that's the way that I do it. So typically I see 3 episodes being a real sweet spot. Most listeners that go through my private podcast listen to either 1 or 3 episodes. Like and lots of people buy after listening to 1. If they're that kind of buyer type, that they're a fast decision maker, they've got what they need to know, that's great. So I do get this question quite a lot. Oh, people are only listening to 1 episode. Does it mean they're not interested or whatever? It's like, no, not necessarily. It could mean that they're that kind of a buyer type. If nobody's listening through till the 3rd episode, then that probably there's some tweaking to do. But then for some people, we add more episodes because that's genuinely useful and kind of helpful for them. Like one of my clients runs a membership, and within the membership, there are 5 kind of key elements that they work with. So, and this is bringing on to the way that I think about it. What they need to do is show you as a partner, to whatever transformation it is that you are offering, even if it's done for you, maybe especially if it's done for you, because people don't want to know the how you're doing it. They want to know the why. They want to know the strategy. They want to understand how you're thinking about it for them. They're trusting you with a piece of their business to deliver on. And also if you're a coach or a consultant, or you do something in more of a transformational way, again, one of the easiest ways to build trust is to share how you think about things and your point of view and why you approach it in the way that you approach it. And, maybe some of the mistakes that you made earlier, so that's why you do it now. And, all of that good stuff. So when we're thinking about partnership, it's like the membership client that I just mentioned. For her, one of her things is that she's there as a facilitator and in the community. She's not there as a teacher or, she very much kind of wants that partnership vibe. So for her, we designed her private podcast that it had 5 episodes, so 1 for each of the key elements within the membership. And then her outline was a series of questions that she could ask 1 or 2 clients. So she had the first episode solo to kind of frame it, introduce herself. And then the rest of the episodes were conversational episodes with members, where we still guide them to talk about their transformation. And, it was still very much rooted in biopsychology and what people need to know to move towards working with you and, make a really informed, confident decision. But for her, what she's selling is community. So we're like, well, let's invite them into the community, have chats, be yourselves, have a laugh, let people know what it's going to feel like. And if they feel that sense of belonging, they'll know they're in the right place. And it's, really obvious next step to join the membership and become part of the community.
That makes so much sense. So yeah, you have a template-ish, but you're not this is exactly how many episodes and how long.
No, it's bespoke. It's bespoke to what's the end.
I love that. And I'm curious, do you add any testimonials or any other examples of people coaching in some of the people who are just coaches and not, membership site owners? Have you played with that? Or are you really trying to keep it? Okay.
No, I'm really open to it. And I think it was, if it adds something that, extra, that's valuable, really open to it. As I said, this is bespoke each time. I suppose if you want to kind of understand the shape of how I think about it, So we always start with what I call making your movement. Like the big, and that puts some people off because they're like, I don't know what my movement is. But I literally just mean like, what is it you're doing here? What's the point of, so the trader and work optional, episode 1 was all about, she sees these different kinds of work optional in the clients that she's working with. So she's giving people like the literal kind of examples of work optional could look like this, or it could look like that. And telling stories of clients that have created, different versions of work optional for them. So by the end of episode 1, people are bought in an emotional way. They can envisage themselves in the transformation, in the movement as a movement is just a group of people that are all kind of moving towards the same thing. That's all it is.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be this big kind of. So that's where we start. And then in the other episodes, we're typically doing a combination of belief shifting. If there are common beliefs that are holding, coming up as hesitations or discounting people from thinking that they're the right person for it, even if they are. We're obviously not trying to persuade people, to go, but just those, like the therapist that works with women with the mother wound. So one of the things that she sees is adult women, the people she works with are typically really successful. They've got a great life, on paper, but inside they're struggling. And one of the things they often say to her is, oh, my mum wasn't a narcissist, or it wasn't that bad, or other people have it worse. So one of her episodes is all about what kind of experiences might count in like a very generalized, specific experiences, but in much more general than people typically think about it. So they can literally listen to the episode and think, oh yeah, I did have some of these experiences. It is, what I'm feeling is valid. It's kind of validating who they are and their experience. So that's the kind of way that we think about it.
Okay. And then how do you think about like calls to action? Are you really strict on like, hey, I want them to know exactly what the next step is? It's book a call, or it's sign up for this program, or join this community? Or what do you think about that?
I don't think it's necessary. I think one of the really good things about private podcasts is that you're always stacking trust. As long as it's rooted in biopsychology, as long as you are meeting people where they are, you're building that curiosity, you're building that trust. So I do always say to people, make sure that in the show notes for every single episode, you have a really clear CTA. This is how you can work with me. This is, so they can just go straight through. Like our episode 1 listeners, then they just go straight through, book a call, join the thing, whatever it is. But I think a kind of subtle selling approach works a lot better with private podcasts. So doing things like mentioning in passing the concept that you used or the process that you used in order to facilitate that transformation. So, not just jumping from, my client came to me like, wanting a private podcast, and then we made a private podcast. You want to, share some of the process so that people, but not talking them through your framework in the kind of, boring.
Yeah, so, you don't have to do that. Yeah. I like that.
But just kind of mentioning how, just some of the concepts. That's one of the things I do with my clients, is making sure they've got really good names for different pieces of the process, so they don't need to go into huge explanations. And in the last episode, that's when we like really give all the detail. This is the next step. This is what the offer is, all of that. And my thinking is that quite often people join after only listening to one episode. They don't need all those details. They're really happy. If they're that kind of proactive buyer, they're really happy to click through to the sales page, make a decision, great. Whereas if they're listening right to the end of the podcast, they're probably, a bit more analytical, or really enjoying the detail that you're giving them, or a bit more risk averse, or, one of those kinds of buyer types. So they're going to want all the detail. So give it to them. And then people can kind of choose how they consume it and sort of make their own buyer journey from it.
Totally. Okay. Super cool. Anything else you want to add about the setup of the feed, the creation of the feed? I guess I should say the structure.
Well, you just said you always get asked this as well. How long should each episode be?
Yes.
I mean, there is no definitive answer, but I think like around sort of 15, 20 minutes is a real sweet spot. I think it's long enough to really go deep on something and, not kind of skim bits that you want to tell. And especially in storytelling, like you want to get into it and give some detail and bring it to life and all of that good stuff. But people aren't signing up to a private podcast expecting like 3-hour long episodes.
True.
You might listen to that on a public podcast. I think that, maybe, probably not. But on a private podcast, I think they want something bingeable. I think that's the kind of mindset. So you don't want to give them an hour to listen to. You want to give them, short and sweet and sharp and short and sharp. I don't know what
all of those. Yeah,
it's like a phrase. Anyway, you want to give them that.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are public podcasts where people talk for 3 hours and people listen to all of it. Like, the iPhone just came out, the new one. There's probably breakdowns that are hours long. But I think those listeners like know that that's what's happening and they're cool. Like they're like, this is what that show does. Like, that's why I'm here. I need this super in-depth analysis. But like to your point, like a private podcast, it's like it is supposed to be that little short thing. Like it doesn't need to be this whole thing. But I also don't want people to overthink it where they're like they think that it has to be 5 minutes or it has to be 20 or whatever, because that's not really true either. But it's more about like the expectation of the person signing up and kind of like how you frame it and all of that. And so, speed and like ease and like get to know me and like blah, blah, is like part of that. Then like they probably expect something that's like poignant enough to be like bingeable. And I think to your point, like you said earlier, there's a hook that's like very specific. So like it does a service to your listener to keep it tight and deliver on exactly what you said you were going to deliver on. And so that's the big thing too. Like when people used to ask me about courses, like how long should the course? It's like as long as you need to get them the result that you're promising. So that still holds true in something like this. And the episodes, I think it's nice when they have a like beginning, middle, end in an episode, right? But then also the podcast has a beginning, middle, end as a whole feed. And so when you think about it from that perspective, it's like, yeah, there's room to do it differently. And just thinking about the intention and what someone is feeling when they choose to sign up, I think that matters too. Because if they're going to get hit with a 3-hour workshop that you ran and you just like didn't edit it at all, and they're not expecting that, that's probably not going to be super great. But I think what you're crafting is this very purposeful thing. And so to me, keeping it tight totally makes sense.
I also want it to be fun to create. We want it to feel, because I think your energy comes across so much in audio or video, that's the beauty of it. But you also don't want to be like, oh God, here we go, and like reading your script. And like, that's not the vibe at all. Like it really should just feel like having coffee with a friend, talking to them, talking as if you were talking to them and just recording it. And even like, I don't really edit mine even. I just, very lightly edit and off we go. Because I think that like nobody is perfect and we don't want to work with perfect people anyway. So just be yourself because your clients are going to discover who you really are anyway. So just like make the whole thing really congruent, just talk how you talk.
The coffee shop, like imagining or whatever, or like imagining yourself in a coffee shop with a person. I used to get that on a public podcast I had before launch a private podcast, but I would get that. Like I met someone in person who was a fan of the show, and it was like, oh, I feel like I already know you. And it's because they're, again, when you do hundreds of episodes, you can't hide anything. Like you're just you. Like you could obviously edit whatever you want to edit, but even still, like stories from your life are going to come out. So here's this like smaller version of that, but with the ability to create that same feeling where it feels like you met for a coffee chat and the person's just, curious, asked a question about what you do or asked a question about how you solve X problem, and you share that. And to your point, if it was scripted, like you wouldn't script something like that if you were sitting there over iced coffee, like with somebody. That would be so weird. So that's right. I think that's what I love about audio is it feels less like there's less polish needed. That and again, of course, I don't teach video or shorts or anything like that, but they say too, like, don't make that really polished. You don't have to. I still think people feel like it because it's like their face. And so they're like, the lighting should be good. Like, how do my wrinkles look? Like, at least you don't have to think about that with audio. So yeah, I co-sign all of this. And I love that that's what you're putting out there because this feels really thoughtful, and from a sales like event is so important. And I think that's what I want to get across too. It's like you're being intentional about the exact journey you're taking someone on, right? And thinking through these pieces like all add up to something that's going to convert really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried all sorts of different lead magnets. Like I've had masterclasses and pre-recorded micro classes and 3 different private podcasts at this point, all sorts of like loads of different things. And the private podcasts have consistently like just blown the other ones out of the water. Like it in terms of sales. So I have had masterclasses that have had far more sign-ups because I think there's that like the window and it's going away and we're very used to that kind of launch sequencing. People are like, great, I'm in. But they haven't converted nearly as well as the private podcast. And I care much more about that in my business,
right?
Than signups. Yeah.
It feels so much lighter for someone listening too, because I think there's so much hoopla around big numbers in everything you do in marketing, right? Because that's the hooks that everyone's selling you that they could get you with their strategy. And so, yeah, I want people to be thinking, particularly thinking about your episode with us where you just had 50 subscribers and you were able to convert those people. Like, it's not about the number of people. It's about the right people raising their hands and them connecting with you in this, audio experience that you've created. And I think that just makes it feel lighter. And I think anything in marketing that feels lighter and fun, right, to create, like you said, and it gets out the door. I mean, that's all we can ask for because the stuff that doesn't get out the door, not good.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I had a client telling me the other day that this was her speaking on podcasts, but she's saying, I'm not sure how well I did, and could we have a chat and just kind of go over and we were talking about it, and I said, so after the podcast, like, what did you see? Like, what was the response? And she said, well, I had 5 people DM me on LinkedIn to ask about my services, and 1 new client, which is like, a 5-figure client. And I was like, okay, so pretty successful for your second ever. And I'm like, that's free, but who cares if 1,000 people didn't join your email list, because you've actually, the right people are coming in and you've got like cash to show for it.
Yeah.
And clients. Yeah.
And I think too, like, marketing is getting more like niche, identity-based, interest-based. So that's what that's going to look like. You know what I mean? Because you're like one of probably a lot of people talking about somewhat of the same stuff. So like, you're probably not going to get 1,000 people who are going to be like, I've never heard this before, but you're going to get the people that is like, I've heard this before, but I want to learn about it from you. Or I want to do I want to be in your world as I explore whatever the topic is. So yeah, I love that. Okay, let's talk about, we're coming up on the end. Is there anything you want to say about like the tech setup as you think about, emails or, bumps and tripwires, like funnel stuff, like, and how complicated you make it or how simple you make it? And if you have any insight there that you want to share.
We don't do any of that.
I knew you were going to say that. Give us the goods. What are you thinking on this? Yeah.
I do. But it's not needed. So the way that I think about it is just start super simple, get something that's working, get people coming in, and then, you can add in anything that you want around bump, strip wires, all that jazz. But the way that I think about it is most of my clients, when they get their deliverables, they have recorded within 3 hours private podcast. Like, it's literally just done. Like they're like, great, let's go. And then so the way that so if you work with me, just get like literal, like step by step, press this, press that. But overall, the easiest way to do it is use Descript. I mentioned before, it's just like a Google Doc to, like, you literally just delete a word and it deletes it from the recording. And then top right, there's a little button that says export, and Hello Audio is literally one of those options. So, there's no uploading and downloading files and all that jazz. It just takes it straight into your feed. And then the simplest way to do it is have show notes for each episode that link to your offer or whatever the next step is, book a call or whatever it is, that a free audit that you're offering, something like that. But I would also always link the paid offer, because you will have people coming through that are like, I know I want this. Let me just listen to one episode to make sure, and then they're ready to buy. So don't make them jump through hoops. They always have kind of those different buyer types in mind, who needs a bit more nurturing and that stacking of trust, and who just wants to move on through. And you've got to cater to both of them always. And then pretty much that is it. In an ideal world, you're also going to be sending emails alongside it, as a kind of welcome sequence. But one of the things, that's so good about private podcasts is they are building your list. So as long as you have well-crafted episodes, your links are really clear, and then they're joining your list and you are emailing them, you can't expect them to literally, it'll happen occasionally, but it's not like a good business model to expect them to literally join the private podcast and then join your offer. You do also need good sales emails that are going out. But what I see is that because you've warmed people up so much, they need far fewer. So in my business, people that have joined through my private podcast, I can see on the back end of my emails, they're the people with the highest open rates. They're the people with the highest click rates by far, and I care about that a lot more. And they buy 3 times faster than people that have joined my list in a different way. So I still do the work to email. It's not like this magic bullet, but it is just this really incredible tool to have inside your business.
You know what? It's interesting because I was thinking about this. Julie Ciardi called it, I think she called it surround sound marketing, which obviously I love because it's audio. But yeah. And so she has the private podcast piece, but then she also was doing these live launches. So now when I hear it, it's you don't want this to live in isolation. But what you brought up is you are getting the magic piece though, and that's the email list. And there is no marketer worth their salt that's saying that you don't need an email list. And in fact, I'm actually hearing it more than ever. And the newsletter rise and stuff that's happening right now. So that's what's cool about doing private versus maybe a public show if you're into audio. But the fact that you have a lead magnet that is interesting and actually getting consumed, that's why they're converting more in the email sequences, right? Because these people are ready, hot. They're more warmed up buyers is what we're finding when we talk to people about this across all different types of ways that they're using private podcasts. And that's, I think, the magical piece. It's anyone out there is saying, yeah, you have to have your email list, capture them. Don't just create TikToks or whatever. But then no one's well, this is the best lead magnet, right? Or this is the one that's actually doing really good stuff. And so that's what I think I want to be saying is hey, maybe the type of lead magnet really matters too, depending on what you teach and, what you offer. But yeah, you're hitting both of the really important things of it's a private podcast. You're getting that connection. You're building that trust. You're establishing your authority, and you're collecting that email address, and you're keeping them in the loop. And so when they're ready, they're ready. And that's what makes private podcasts so good.
Yeah, for sure. You just make it so easy for yourself, and you make it so easy for your future clients, and everyone's winning.
Yeah, so good. All right. Any other final things that, we haven't talked about, maybe some of the results that you're seeing from your clients? If you have any insights now that you've kind of been working with a lot of people on this, anything that you're seeing across the board, trends or anything like that?
So it's pretty early days for,
Sure.
I've done a lot of them, but a lot over the last, little while. So it's early, and I've not been good at getting the feedback just yet, but I will. There'll be results coming. But kind of anecdotally, one of the things that we're seeing is people's private podcasts being shared. So one of my clients is really active on LinkedIn, and I'm not really a LinkedIn girl, but apparently the reach used to be absolutely amazing. And then recently the reach has really dropped. It's very hard to grow and be seen and kind of get into new audiences on LinkedIn. So that's one of the things that she really wanted to be able to do. And the very first morning that she published her private podcast. She shared about it on LinkedIn. And of course, because it's like long form, your private podcast, it gives you all tons and tons of short form content. So when you're sharing about it, you just pull
that's a good
from
point.
the episodes. So, yeah, like really just make it easy for yourself. So she did that. And that same morning, somebody that wasn't a connection of hers on LinkedIn shared the private podcast. So they'd already found it, downloaded, listened to it, shared it on LinkedIn, tagged her, and talked about a really specific kind of nuance so she's also a positioning strategist. And she takes a really unique, amazing kind of perspective on it. And the person that shared it was talking about how positioning people and messaging people don't get people like me, and then kind of named her industry and like tagged some people. So it was like literally positioning my client in a new, introducing her to all of her mates that did the same thing as her, as like, this is the one we've been looking for. So, we're back to positioning again. We're back to a great name. We're back. We do cover art I partner with a designer who does cover art because I think that really helps as well, the visuals of it and, all that kind of stuff. So, and then another client who she already had a really good lead magnet. It was very strategic, but she was finding it wasn't always addressing the mindset issues that were coming up. So we did a private podcast that is like a bonus part of opt-in. She's keeping the opt-in because it works great. It's really strong. Walks them through it. And then people that want a bit more of the mindset support listen to the private podcast. So she's finding that it's working for that kind of buyer type as well as like the very kind of, go-getting self-starter that's able to just crack on with it.
Oh, that's a good, I haven't heard that before. Like, especially with like lead magnets. You're like a bonus with a lead magnet, but that's cool. Like, because we've had people do like walkthroughs maybe of their PDF or whatever. And so I guess that's related. Like, it's like a companion that can go, because we will tell you like, don't change anything that's already working, but like, how can you add value, or how could you like spin it into a new asset, or make it exciting again? Like, that's a great way to add a private podcast in as well. Super fun. Okay. Well, we'll have to have you back on again when we hear more, when you've worked with like hundreds of people on this, right? I love that you're doing this. It's so needed. We get asked stuff like this all the time. So hopefully people who are listening who are pretty sold on the private podcast thing. Natalie, where can they find you? I mean, obviously you have a private podcast that they can sign up for, right? No.
I'm actually recording a new one. Yeah. There's a new one coming. It's called A League of Your Own, and it's all about how to use a private podcast to build this kind of capsule body of work that positions you as a league of your own. So you can get that at nataliekoussa.com/league. And if you're interested in Trust Funnel, go to my website. It's really easy to find, nataliekoussa.com, and just look up my homepage. You'll be able to see Trust Funnel there. Get all the details.
I love your website. I was just poking around. I was like, oh, it's so pretty. Very visually appealing website. Nora and I were on it. Super fun. So we'll definitely have you back on. Thanks again for sharing everything that you're working on. Yeah. Awesome. Take care.